You're not just tired, you're being drained. Not by one big thing, but by 1,000 tiny cuts. A text here, a favor there. The subtle pressure to always be reachable, agreeable, useful. It's not just exhaustion, it's erosion. You keep saying yes, not because you want to, but because it's easier than dealing with what happens if you don't. You've been taught to flinch at no, to feel guilty for protecting your time, to believe that your worth comes from being needed. Even when it's killing you, you tell yourself you're helping, that it's just one more thing, that it's what good people do. But let's be honest, you're not overwhelmed because there's too much to do. You're overwhelmed because you've made yourself available to everyone but yourself. Every yes that wasn't real. Every smile you forced through gritted teeth. Every time you said it's fine when it wasn't. It builds, and eventually it breaks you. And still, you keep going, because stopping feels worse. Because saying no feels selfish. Because deep down you're scared that if you stop being useful, you'll stop being loved. But here's the truth. If your kindness requires you to disappear, if your generosity costs you your peace, if being needed is the only reason people keep you around, that's not a relationship. That's extraction. They don't need you. They need what you give them. And you've been trained to give until there's nothing left. So no, this isn't just burnout. It's self-betrayal, repeated, normalized, rewarded. And unless you learn how to stop, unless you learn how to say no, it won't get better. It'll just get quieter, heavier, lonelier. So start here, not with more productivity, not with better time management. Start with this one question. Who gets your yes, and do they deserve it? You know what's terrifying? Half the things draining you don't even feel dramatic. They're just constant. An email at 9 p.m. A message that just needs a quick reply. Another meeting that should have been an email. Another call you didn't have time for but took anyway because you didn't want to seem rude. This is the trap. It's not one big ask. It's the slow suffocation of being always available. You're not allowed to disappear. You're not allowed to disconnect. You're expected to be on, alert, responsive, agreeable. Every hour, every day. And if you push back, even a little, you risk being labeled cold, difficult, selfish. You risk disappointing people who never think twice about what they're taking from you. This is how modern life works. It conditions you to believe that your value is in your output, that your worth is measured by how many people you say yes to, that to rest is to fall behind. But here's what that creates. A human being that functions more like a service. You're not a person anymore. You're a resource. Something people tap into, not someone they truly see. And maybe you felt it. That hollow space when everyone's gotten what they needed from you, and you're left sitting there, depleted, wondering if anyone ever actually asks what you need. Here's the worst part. You get good at hiding it. You smile, you deliver, you show up. And slowly your capacity to feel real joy or real connection or even real rest, it gets numbed. Not because you're broken, but because you've been stretched so thin, there's no self left to bring to anything. This isn't life. This is survival on autopilot. And the longer it goes on, the harder it is to remember who you were before you became useful. You didn't start out this way. You used to have boundaries. You used to know what lit you up, what made you feel human. But now you flinch at the idea of disappointing people. You say yes before you've even thought it through. You apologize for not being available, even when you owe no one an explanation. That's not just pressure, that's programming. And if you don't question it, if you don't interrupt it, it will eat your entire life while convincing you that you're just being responsible. But here's where it gets interesting. Someone saw this coming. Before phones, before inboxes, before burnout had a name, someone saw what happens when people live for everyone but themselves. Nietzsche didn't write self-help. He wrote warnings, and they still apply. Modern life breaks you down quietly, but Nietzsche saw it coming, even before all this noise. He didn't write about group chats or burnout or unpaid emotional labor, but he did write about people losing themselves in the roles they're told to play, about obedience dressed up as morality, about how society rewards the ones who stay quiet, comply, serve. And he hated it. To Nietzsche, this wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. He believed the greatest threat to your life wasn't chaos. It was comfort. Comfort that numbs you. Comfort that asks you to blend in, say yes, be agreeable. Comfort that tells you being useful is the same thing as being good. He called it slave morality, a mindset where you define yourself by how well you serve others, how non-threatening you are, how small you're willing to make yourself to be accepted. Sound familiar? This is what happens when you spend your life trying to avoid rejection. When your highest goal is to not be a problem, you become invisible, quietly erased, and you call it maturity. But Nietzsche wasn't interested in politeness. He was obsessed with power. Not power over others, but the power to become yourself. The will to power wasn't about ego or dominance. It was about direction. It meant choosing your life instead of reacting to it. Building yourself from the inside out, not molding yourself to fit what others expect. And here's where it hits. Every time you say yes out of fear, out of guilt, out of the need to be liked, you surrender that power. You become less of a person, more of a mirror. Reflecting what people want to see, echoing what they want to hear. That's not compassion, that's survival mode. And Nietzsche would say, that's no way to live. He believed you were meant to rise, not in status, not in followers, but in depth, in clarity, in truth. But you can't do that if your life belongs to everyone but you. To preserve yourself, you have to resist the constant pressure to dissolve, to be whatever someone else needs in the moment. To give because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. And that's where no comes in. Saying no isn't rejection, it's protection. It's how you draw the outline of who you are. It's how you carve space to become. Because if you can't say no, your yes means nothing. Nietzsche wasn't telling you to become cruel. He was telling you to become real, to stop performing goodness and start living truth. But that starts by asking the question most people avoid. Who would I be if I stopped trying to be liked? So now what? You've seen the trap. You've felt it. You've named it. You've spent years bending, accommodating, nodding, smiling. You've told yourself it's easier this way. But that ease has cost you your energy, your focus, your peace. So what do you do with all of that? You learn to say no, not just as a reaction, not just when things get unbearable, but as a practice, a way of life. Because no isn't rejection. It's clarity. It's the moment you stop being a product and start being a person again. But let's be honest, saying no feels wrong at first. Your throat tightens, you overthink it, you wonder how they'll take it. You imagine the disappointment, the awkward silence, the fallout. And then, like always, you give in, you say yes. Because saying yes buys peace, not real peace, temporary peace. The kind that keeps everyone else comfortable while you slowly disappear. But here's the truth. If your yes is driven by guilt, fear, or obligation, it's not generosity, it's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment doesn't end well. It builds into burnout, resentment, quiet rage. You start to hate the people you're helping, and worse, you start to hate yourself for not stopping it. That's why saying no matters. It's not just a word, it's a boundary, a border. A line that says, this is where I end, and you begin. Most people aren't taught how to draw that line, especially if you were raised to be the peacemaker, the fixer, the responsible one. But boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. You can't be everything for everyone and still expect to have something left for yourself. And saying no, that's the first boundary. It tells the world, I exist, I choose, I matter. Sometimes it'll sound calm. Thanks for thinking of me, but I can't take that on right now. Sometimes it'll sound blunt. No, that doesn't work for me. And sometimes it won't sound like anything at all. Just silence where you used to rush to explain yourself. You don't owe people a speech. You don't need to justify your limits. The people who respect you won't need convincing. The ones who demand an explanation, they're the ones who were never listening to begin with. And yes, it'll feel uncomfortable at first. You'll worry they'll think you're cold, that you've changed. But what if that's not a problem? What if it's proof that you're finally showing up for yourself? Because here's the thing. When you learn to say no, really say it without guilt, something else happens. You start to remember what yes is supposed to feel like. It's easy to talk about boundaries in theory, harder when it's your boss, your mother, your best friend, harder when the ask feels small, the guilt feels big, and the silence after your refusal is louder than anything you've said all week. So let's talk about what saying no actually looks like in real life. Your boss drops a last-minute task on your desk. You've already hit your limit for the week. You want to be a team player. You want to be seen as dependable. But dependable for who? At what cost? You pause. You feel the instinct to cave, to smile, nod, take it on. Instead, you say, I'm at capacity this week. If it's urgent, we'll need to reshuffle priorities. You don't apologize. You don't shrink. You stay neutral, firm, clear. That's not rebellion. That's self-respect. Or maybe it's your friend. They're going through something again. They want to talk. You've already been that person. The late-night call, the emotional lifeline, the unpaid therapist, but you're burnt. You've been holding their world together while yours falls apart in silence. So this time you say, I care about you, but I don't have the bandwidth to hold space for this right now. They might not like it. They might call you distant, but that discomfort, it's better than resentment. Because when you keep giving past your limit, eventually you start giving less honestly, and nobody wins. Sometimes no is quiet. You don't explain. You just don't answer. Not out of malice, but because not everything deserves a response. Not every access point needs to stay open. You turn the phone off. Let the message sit. Let the pressure pass. The world won't end. You'll just feel your nervous system exhale for the first time in days. And sometimes no is subtle, not even a word, but a decision. You skip the event. You cancel the plan. You stay home when everyone else is performing excitement they don't even feel. Not to be antisocial, but to come back to yourself. This is what the practice looks like. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it costs you people who only liked you when you were easy to control. But every time you say no and mean it, something changes. You get clearer, quieter inside, more intact. You stop leaking energy into situations that never fill you back up. You stop living in reaction mode and start creating space for real choices. And the more you practice it, the more natural it gets. Until eventually, no stops feeling like a confrontation and starts feeling like alignment. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need your endless availability. It needs you. The version of you that exists when you finally stop being everything for everyone else. You spend so much time trying to avoid guilt, disappointment, conflict, that you forget what it feels like to actually have space. Saying no isn't just about protecting time. It's about reclaiming what that time is for. When you stop leaking your energy everywhere, you get something rare in return. Clarity. Not clarity in some abstract spiritual sense, but real, felt clarity. You wake up and your mind isn't fogged with obligation. You move through your day and you can actually feel what matters. Decisions stop being exhausting because you're not carrying everyone else's priorities on your back. You start to think again. Breathe again. You notice things you used to rush past because now you're not racing to keep up with everyone's demands. And from that clarity, something else returns. Desire. Not productivity, not responsibility. Desire. You remember what you care about, what excites you, what fills you up instead of empties you out. You start saying yes again, but now it's real. Not out of guilt, not out of habit, but because it aligns. You say yes to the friend who respects your boundaries. Yes to the project that actually matters to you. Yes to the version of yourself you abandoned when people-pleasing became your personality. And here's the part most people never talk about. When you say no enough times, the noise dies down. The people who only stuck around because of what they could take from you, they disappear. But that's not a loss. That's a filter. It clears the space for real connection, real presence, real peace. You stop attracting takers. You start building with people who see you, not just what you can do for them. You stop managing everyone's perception of you. You just live. And no, it's not perfect. Some days you still slip. Some days the guilt sneaks back in. But the difference now? You notice it. You don't drown in it. You don't make it your compass. This is what saying no gives you. A life that actually fits. A rhythm that doesn't burn you out. An identity that doesn't disappear every time someone asks for a favor. Because you're not here to be palatable. You're not here to be convenient. You're here to be you, intact, awake, aligned. And you don't get there by saying yes to everything. You get there by saying yes to the right things, which only happens when you have the guts to say no to the wrong ones. No isn't a wall, it's a door. And behind it, peace, time, power. Let's stop pretending this is easy, because it's not. It's not easy to say no to your boss when they expect you to work overtime. Again, and you know saying no might make you look difficult, replaceable. It's not easy to say no to your family when you've been the peacekeeper, the helper, the one who always picks up the pieces. And now you're saying, not this time. It's not easy to say no to friends who don't even realize they're draining you because you've never shown them your limit. And it's definitely not easy to say no to yourself, to the part of you that still believes your worth comes from being needed. But here's what's worse. Spending your whole life being liked by people who don't know who you are. Being praised for being reliable, generous, supportive, while you quietly disintegrate behind the curtain. Getting to the end of another week, month, year, and realizing you didn't actually choose any of it. You just didn't say no fast enough. That's not a life, that's a slow disappearance. And if you felt it, that hollow, quiet exhaustion, then you already know something has to change. And no one's going to give you permission to change it. People don't applaud boundaries. They don't cheer when you protect your energy. They notice when you stop playing the role they liked you in, and they get uncomfortable. But you weren't born to be a role. You were born to be real. You don't get your life back by being more productive. You don't find peace by downloading another wellness app. You don't reclaim your identity by smiling through the burnout and hoping things get easier. You get it back by saying no. Loudly, softly, calmly. Whatever the moment calls for. You say no to the meeting that shouldn't be yours. You say no to the friend who only calls when they need something. You say no to the belief that your time isn't as valuable as theirs. You say no to becoming a ghost in your own life. And every time you do, it gets louder in here. Not noisy, but clear. You start to hear yourself again. The real you. The one you buried under years of forced politeness, stretched out apologies, and fake smiles. That voice has been waiting. It doesn't want a perfect life. It doesn't need external validation. It just wants space, truth, integrity. But it only shows up when you start listening, when you stop performing, when you stop saying yes just to keep the peace. Because here's the part no one told you. Saying no is how you heal. Not by cutting everyone off, not by becoming hard, but by finally learning the difference between peace and people-pleasing. Peace doesn't mean no one's upset with you. Peace means you're no longer at war with yourself. That's what this is really about. This was never just about the word no. It's about becoming someone who protects their time like it matters, who protects their energy like it's sacred, who protects their self even when it makes others uncomfortable. Because that discomfort, It's nothing compared to the pain of realizing you lived your entire life on someone else's terms. You've played small long enough. You've made yourself digestible long enough. You've said yes when you meant no long enough. And now it's time to stop. Not tomorrow. Not when you burn out again, now. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with clarity. Because the truth is simple. If you don't start saying no, your yes will never mean anything. And your life, your real life, the one you were meant to live, not perform, that starts the second you stop asking for permission. If this shook something loose in you, good. Sit with it. Don't scroll past it. And if you're ready to protect your energy, protect your time, protect you, then keep going. Subscribe, or don't. Just make sure it's a yes you actually mean.